With Neve Campbell more or less being locked in for Scream 5, fan theories have run rampant on how her character will be handled, ranging anywhere from being the opening kill to being the killer herself. So let's weigh the pros and cons of her return, and I'll give you my take on how they could successfully bring back her character. What is up, Scream team? Zack here. Guys, I started this channel because I'm a huge horror geek, and if you're like me, you might want to consider hitting that subscribe button and turning on those bell notifications so that you can get alerts to all my new videos, including news, reviews, and rankings. Also, we just passed the 1,000 subscriber mark, and you guys have been so awesome with leaving your feedback and introducing yourselves to me, which has been great for me to get to know each and every one of you. So for anyone who's new to the channel, go ahead and say hello down in the comments. Let me know where you're from, how you're doing, and most importantly, I want to hear how you think Sidney will factor into Scream 5. Just for shits and gigs, toss this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. It will let YouTube know that you want to see more Scream content, and it'll also help this channel to grow. So last week, Neve Campbell finally broke her silence and let us know that she has been having conversations with the Scream 5 directors, Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillett. We don't know the specifics of these conversations, but what we do know is that the directors have approached her with an appreciation for Wes Craven's legacy, and they're open to working with Neve Campbell to make sure that the movie that she's gonna be in is the one that she thinks Wes Craven would have wanted to see. Trying to figure out the production of this movie has been one big mind clusterfuck, as this was supposed to start shooting this month, but the way that she's making it sound is that they're only now reaching out to her and having these conversations, which makes it sound like if they were gonna start shooting, they'd have a script ready, and that bringing back Sidney would just be more of an afterthought, so she would just kind of be a cameo appearance or something like that. Now, I really hope that that's not the case. I don't think that it is. I think that she knows a lot more than what she's letting on. She's probably been in conversations with them for quite a while now. You know, I read all of your comments, and I also read the comments on other threads pertaining to Scream 5, and the biggest apprehension I've heard from fans is that they think that there's no version of this movie that could possibly work. As on one hand, these movies have gotten a little repetitive. Each one of them has seen Sidney being stalked by a serial killer, typically of either the Loomis or Roberts bloodline, who may or may not have an accomplice. And every time she's survived, so you have this group of fans who are tired of seeing this play out, and personally, I don't blame them. It's gotten to the point where the natural evolution of the story would see this ridiculous Scream 3-esque plot where we learn that Sidney had a baby with her one-night tryst with Billy. She put the baby up for adoption, went off to college, yada yada yada. 25 years later, this kid is pissed off and has the DNA from two separate families that each have serial killer blood in them, and this kid is gonna be the genetic mixture of all that insanity. If this is the Scream 5 plot, I am jumping ship because this idea is bullshit. No offense to anyone who's thought of this on their own, but there are literally thousands of you who've come up with this, and it is not groundbreaking at all. If anything, they need to get the hell away from storylines like this. Whatever they plan on doing, it needs to be a good story. They need to justify coming back after a 10-year hiatus. But then it seems like the solution that people have to kind of mix things up so it's not repetitive is to kill Sidney off. And let me tell you right now that that is a terrible idea. Neve Campbell would probably agree with that too, and whatever these conversations are that she's having with Matt and Tyler must include some sort of talk about her getting killed off and how she wouldn't be on board with that, as that is not how Wes Craven would want to see his legacy continue. I just couldn't see her agreeing to come back in order to be the opening kill of the movie. I mean, Sidney's way better than that. She's proven herself. We know that she's a fighter. She's not gonna just get taken out 25 years later after finding peace within her life. Like, that is just a really shitty way for her character to go down. Not to mention the fact that killing Sidney off wouldn't even be that much of a surprise. In a franchise that's constantly deconstructing itself, the idea of killing off Sidney has come up numerous times already. The problem is, if you do that, that's kind of it. There's no going back. Unless you're the Halloween franchise and you don't mind having like 20 different timelines, then you really need to ask yourself, is this what you want? Do you want a main character to get killed off? Because they already did that with Randy in Scream 2, and people are still salty about that to this day. I'm personally not against any of the big three being killed off, but if they are to do it, it should serve some sort of greater character or story purpose. To do it solely for shock value would just result in diminishing returns for the franchise. You can look no further than Halloween Resurrection killing off Laurie Strode in its opening scene. That should serve as a cautionary tale to every horror movie franchise who's entertained the idea of killing off its main character. They basically wrote themselves into a corner with that and creatively had nothing left, that they were fucked for several years until they finally decided to just remake the entire franchise. And I'm pretty sure that nobody wants to see a remake of Scream. I mean, maybe there's a few of you out there, but the majority of us don't want to see a complete overhaul of this series. So the question now becomes, where do we go from here? Presumably, they're gonna want to make Scream movies well into the future, and in order for that to happen, Sidney might need to hang up her coat at some point, just to keep things fresh so we're not rehashing the same storylines from the previous films, but at the same time, we don't want to piss off our core fan base by completely wasting this character. I mean, they could do what Halloween is doing and have a brand new trilogy just to cap off the Sidney Prescott storyline, but the difference there is that the Halloween franchise has always been about Michael Myers, while the Scream franchise has always been about Sidney Prescott and the other characters. Ghostface is just kind of incidental. These actors have been a consistent variable, and since the relationship between Sidney and the killer has been different from film to film, it doesn't really necessitate having a three-part epic to tell this story in. You can do it in one movie. Unless there are multiple killers who don't all get revealed at the end of the first movie, but now we're just overcomplicating it. If we're gonna keep it simple, this is how I would bring Sidney back for one last movie. We already know that the plot of the movie is about a woman returning to her hometown to investigate a series of murders. I think it's safe to assume that the town in question will be Woodsboro, but there's been a lot of debate on whether the woman is Sidney or not. So let's just say that it is Sidney. Why would she be returning? What would motivate her to go back to Woodsboro? In the past, every killer has come to her and chosen her as their intended victim. So this would be the first time that she would purposely include herself to be part of the narrative, presumably to help out someone else who she already knows, or someone who's going to become the next Sidney. This goes hand in hand with the theory that Sidney will be returning to pass the torch on to somebody new. But there has to be a logical way of portraying that in the movie. This can't just be a cameo where out of nowhere she rides up on a white steed and bequeaths her crown upon someone new, then rides off into the night. She will need to be heavily involved in the story, so she should be the character that is returning to Woodsboro. There are many different reasons as to why or how she might be incited into doing this, but I think the most interesting way to go about it would have Sidney be some sort of FBI consultant. The last time we saw Sidney, she was an accomplished author writing about her life experiences. It could be a natural evolution that she would start writing about serial killers, having encountered and survived 7 of them in her lifetime. That, I could see, would make her a valuable asset to the FBI, who would want to enlist her expertise in solving similar cases. Whether that means she already has an established career working with them, or they approach her after the opening kill of this movie, I think it would be a very fitting way to have Sidney be involved and potentially carry the movie as its main character. If she has been working for the feds, a potential twist to reveal this could be to have the opening kill of the movie be subverted by having the FBI show up at the last minute to thwart the would-be killer or killers, and then Sidney would step out of a car and whoever's in charge could congratulate her on cracking the case, and then the movie would go from there. Ooh, that actually gives me Jason Goes to Hell vibes. It's interesting because when you look over the franchise, every movie is unique because it has a very specific theme. Scream 1 is a commentary on horror movies, Scream 2 is horror sequels, Scream 3 horror trilogies, and Scream 4 horror remakes. Scream 5 needs to have a unique theme as well. It's being touted as a reboot, but they can't reuse that idea again because that'll just come off as a rehash of Scream 4. That's why I think the theme of Scream 5 should be horror nostalgia. And that would make sense if you consider that the killer is basing their murders off of the original Stab movie. They wouldn't be targeting Sidney, they would be paying homage to slasher movies of the 90s with a new set of victims. Sidney could be the nostalgia expert and help them solve the murders, and afterwards she could either quietly go back to her life, never to be heard from again, or she could also potentially die. But as long as they set it up so that there is a future for the franchise and it was done for a good reason, then maybe people would be less pissed off about it. Let me know how you feel about that in the comments. Be sure to give me your theory, and if you're looking for more Scream content, you can check check out my character rankings for the first Scream movie, the second Scream movie, and also my rankings of all 7 of the Ghostface killers. I'll link that on the screen and down below for you. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I've been Zack Cherry, and I'll be right back.